Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Allison Rouse, author of this little guy right here, not so little, and these other books right here, also all available on audiobook now. Yay! Where you can get all that, my merchandise, everything, as you know, down in that description. So go down like it's the back lounge of a tour bus in the 80s. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the love, all the support, all the friendships, everybody that's just really bonding, that's having conversations, not just with me, but with each other. That's so awesome that this little family's really kind of growing. I love it. And especially to the girls that I've met that have come on the show. I've got a really cool one coming on, a couple other girls coming back. You guys, some really cool stuff coming. So thank you so much to everybody, as always. Whether you're a member, whether you're subscribed, whether you're just hanging out in the nosebleeds. You guys rock. And speaking of rock, you guys, I kind of lost sight here in all my little rock and roll stories about really my journey of music and how I kind of fell in love with it and what took me to the genres, to the different stuff that really kind of came along. So today that's kind of going to be our topic about my journey with music and that took me to the eye of the storm, as I always say, because, I fell so deeply in love with the journey of music, with the reality of music, with the where it came from, the life, the why, the what, that I just went into that eye of the storm blindly, not prepared. Woo! It was a fun ride, though. And today we are going to have one of my favorites, because music is a favorite, and this is all about my favorite musics. So we're going to have Dragon's Milk, another bourbon soak stout. You guys, this is so good. I always say, if you find it in your neck of the woods, give it a go, because it is delicious. So everybody, grab dragons, kick up your feet, and let's have a little cocktail and rocktail. Cheers, big ears. Oh, so good. So good. It's just that perfect soak with the whiskey and stuff. Delicious. And let's get on to some delicious music. So everybody who's read my book, or, the first thing I talk about is going into my brother's room, or my sister and I getting punished and being put into my brother's room, two of us going to the woodshed. Well, that woodshed held so much amazing music. I mean, it's where I first kind of, because, I always loved music. It was just something that was a part of my family, either whether my dad was tinkering in his garage with cars or doing whatever woodwork he was doing. And my mom, while she was cleaning the house or cooking, baking for the holidays, there was always music around. So it really was kind of a huge part of my life and very much just normal activity, normal. Solid Gold was on. American Bandstand was a Saturday morning favorite, and I would always be recording songs that I liked off my little cassette recorder, the kind where you have to press play and record and you get your little cassette. Yeah, because my first one was an 8-track tape of the Beatles. And my brother had got a new stereo, so he gave me his 8-track, and oh my God, it came with the Beatles, I think the Beach Boys, which I already knew the Beach Boys, and I loved them, but the Beatles, because I think it was the White Album, and I remember looking at the cover with the band on it, and I was like, oh, that Paul McCartney, oh, he's so cute. George Harrison was a better suit, really, in the long run. But so yeah, I'm just like, that was kind of my first exposure, was my brother's 8-track tape. And then when my sister and I would get in fights and our dad would put us in our brother's room till we just fought it out, there would be all my brother's music. So all the good music, I was constantly sneaking in there because my brother's room had the good music. It's where I first discovered Meatloaf. Oh, the album of Meatloaf and Bat Out of Hell, that was just everything, because that was a huge song back in the 70s. Because, I was probably 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old when I really actually started forming a love for music. I always liked art as it was, and I always kind of liked different things. And then you get to the point where you start thinking boys are cute. You're in the 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, whatever, where you start being chased on the playground and stuff. Well, my playground was my brother's room, and then Kiss. He got a Kiss out, the double Kiss album. Oh my God, with all of them, and oh, I was so in love with Ace Frehley. My sister was in love, I think, with Peter Criss. Then they took off their makeup, and not so much. I went for Eric Carr, as we all know. So that was kind of my brother's room was really my introduction into more rock and roll. Because like I said, it was the Beatles, but I was all about Sean Cassidy and, Leif Garrett and, what was his name? Oh God, Rex something or other, into those kind of the boy bands of the time, the boy singers, Andy Gibb, more into that little kind of soft rock, pop rock. But then, I got the Beatles, and then Duran Duran came out, and Depeche Mode, and, the whole 80s new wave hit. But then one day, like I said, my brother's room really kind of introduced me to hard rock. Like Kiss, loved them from the start. But then as you get older, your interests start to change. You start to kind of grow in different directions. And I remember it was not long before, about a year before I moved to Salt Lake City, maybe 6 months. I was probably about 14 or 15. And somebody had put in, it was Rat. We were all at the city pool because I grew up in a small town, like 500 people at the time. It's like 5,000 now, but back then it was 500 people, really, like 550, something like that. So there was a city pool that we'd all hang out at, all day long, eat snacks, swim, talk, play music. And someone had bought a boombox and put in Rat. And I had already heard David Lee Roth. So so that was my next step. So kind of skipped a step because I obviously already met Van Halen. That I listened to 1984 in Panama. Panama just kind of, I reached down between my legs because I'd already met David Lee Roth, and that had already happened. So that line in the song, just in Panama, that song was so exciting and so tingling, in the girl parts and stuff, just really turned my senses on in different ways. And so I was starting to kind of gear towards hard rock because it did give me that kind of excitement that as teenagers, when you're going through puberty and stuff, that just, yeah, the woohoo. So we were at the pool one day, and this is, I think, right before, like maybe a month. So it probably wasn't a year. It was probably about a month or so before we moved to Salt Lake City. And we were all laying out at the pool at the city, the city pool, and hanging out and just talking. And someone came in and said, yeah, I got this new tape today. And it was Rat. And he turned it on, and it was Round and Round, and Lay It Down, and Lay It Down, just, whoo, because I was getting interested in boys and the whole physical side and everything, because I had met David Lee Roth and discovered his physical side. Oh God, yeah. Yeah. Cheers to you, David Lee. But so that was so I was kind of getting into the dirty rocker boys kind of scene. And when I heard Rat, oh my gosh. Like I said, by this point, I'd already met my first band by accident. If you don't know, it's the first couple chapters of the book, or I've got it down here, one of my first stories when I very first started this channel. But yeah, so Rat just it really kind of geared me more because, Van Halen was more that American rock and roll. But then you got to Rat, and it was something different. Something kind of more dirty rocker boy, kind of, sleazy, sexy music, just total West Coast LA. And it was like, well, I like that. And then we moved, and we all know my first concert was Rat with Bon Jovi opening. So that I had already met my first band. And before I even went to my first concert, I hadn't been, like, some local band from St. Louis had played in Salem, and some Elvis impersonator, that was the most I had ever really seen of rock and roll in real life. So I was kind of really turned on by Rat. And when we found out, my friend Danny and I found out that Rat was playing the night before the first day of school in a school that was bigger than my whole town. There was like 3,000 students. I came from a town of 500. So I kind of really had that dazed and confused upbringing where it was all music and cruising and, drinking by Ziski's lake and hearing all that music playing from everybody's cars, just hanging out. So music was always there as it was. But then after I heard Rat and we moved to Salt Lake City and I went to that concert before, oh my God, it was the vibe of that concert that really, I was like, home. This is home for me. Just walking in there and realizing the bands are accessible and, just actually feeling the community coming together no matter what side of town or whatever you were from or what color, what anything. It was just everybody coming together for the love of music. And it was like a family vibe back then, Standing in the crowd, someone takes a puff. Hey, I don't know you, but here, let's share. Type of thing, So it was just that was a huge turning point in my groupie life, in my musical love for the music, because the love for the music, like I said, didn't just stop at listening to the albums and loving one band. Like I said, it kind of, when I went to the Rat, because I had already met David Lee Roth, and that was very quick. I wasn't really acknowledged about, the band on the road yet, but it was just like, whoa. These guys are accessible. And then when I moved to Salt Lake City, I just found out how accessible they were, and to feel like the concert and not just the crowd up front, but watching the road crew, and when the lights went down and the band came up on that stage, and then just so turned on by the senses in so many ways. I was like, yeah, this is home. I get this. I love this. Being at the shows, and then you meet your first band and then you listen to Motley Crue and all these good 80, kind of glam metals. That was fun. In your teenage years, when I was getting older though, then came a whole new genre. See, that's the cool thing about Gen X. Our music was not just limited. When we say we have the best music, we mean in any type of genre. Whether it's soul, rap was burgeoning, pop rock, punk rock, metal, thrash, glam, all of it. We had so many different types of music. And in the 80s, when I was a teenager, it was Dangerous Toys really was one of my favorites. When I discovered Dangerous Toys' music, I was like, wow, these guys are amazing. Because, when it came to LA glam metal for me, it was all kind of the same. Your blonde lead singer, your cute guitar player, your hung like a horse drummer, that kind of stuff. So, but it was exciting and it was fun and it was carefree. But then came thrash, and the first time I heard Metallica, and it was like about something, about feelings, about addiction, about politics, about war, stuff like that. It just kind of turned on a whole different sense to me when I heard Metallica. So that, and then that opened the door for like Megadeth and Testament, and as a groupie experience, hanging out with these guys was different than hanging out with the glam metal guys. It was more an intellectual conversation. I mean, it was always fun conversation with the glam metal guys, the, West Coast rocker dudes. Yeah, it was always fun conversation, but then you got into the thrash metal. And then when raps really started coming with NWA and, just all those guys, and oh my God, that was a whole different thing. I remember the first time I heard NWA, it was on tour bus with Axl Rose. He had a pre-recorded cassette tape. He's like, you got to hear this. And that's one of the cool things about hanging out with musicians, is they're hearing stuff before anybody else outside of their own city or the rest of the world might have heard. They're hearing bands that are about to hit the friggin' fan and just explode, So that was really kind of cool. One of the things I really do love about hanging out with musicians and roadies and stuff, because that's how I discovered Tom Waits. And oh God, when I heard Tom Waits, I was like, hold on. But that was later. So that's, I think because I get so lost in the stories about rock and roll, about stories with other groupies, about the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, a lot of people forget, well, because I have got comments that, oh, well, you don't love the music like those 70 girls did. We all loved the music. That's what we're all doing here. Even the 80s ladies. We weren't just star fuckers, trying to get a leg up or put notches on our belts. Yeah, I mean, when I say I loved taking a lover, that was just something that I enjoyed. That was kind of a perk that went along with the rock world, with getting into the eye of the storm of rock and roll, and just there were so many eras and so many music. I mean, I remember the 80s, like one of my favorite songs of the 80s was Iron Maiden 666, the number of the beast. You're sitting there listening to the talking, that voice at the beginning, and then it just gets into do, 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 and that guitar playing. And that's when I really first discovered, like, I was turned on by the fact that I could hear great musicians and good guitar playing. I could discern it from, like Bobby Dahl from Poison said, I never cared to be about being a great musician. I cared about being a rock star. So that's kind of, when I first heard Iron Maiden, and of course I had heard Eddie Van Halen, he was a genius. We all knew that, but you didn't really know when you're first discovering music. So Van Halen was just kind of par for the course. But then when I kind of heard the difference in guitars with Iron Maiden, or with, even Metallica, even Megadeth, Dangerous Toys and stuff just had this different sound to them. I felt more educated about music. I felt more like, yeah, this really is a journey about different parts of my life, because it's like you just grow up with it. And it's for all of us, whether we're on the stage, setting it up, standing in front of it, underneath the rock stars, whatever we're doing in rock and roll, music is definitely a journey. And for people standing in front of the stage, it can be emotional, make sense, help them through bad times and stuff. But for those of us backstage, it can be about us. It can be about those nights we had, or the fights we had, stuff like that. So in my journey, kind of being a groupie really opened up doors in different aspects and different knowledge, like the sound and how it really all comes together. So for me, that was really exciting because, like I said, I didn't want to just like identify and go to the concerts and wave my lighter. Gen X, you'll know what I'm talking about. And like I said, with Gen X, we had so many different types of music. And, with thrash, it was kind of my intellectual growing with the music and the intelligence that went into it and stuff. And then came grunge, which was a whole different guitar sound, which was a whole different attitude, a whole different kind of feeling in the music. And the first time, I remember Danny and I cruising down State Street in Salt Lake City, because we used to cruise, park, everybody had music going, beer in their, whatever, alcohol in their car boots, the trunks, stuff like that. So I remember cruising down State Street one time, and K-Bear's like, this is a new band, and we had already heard Mother Love Bone. We already knew who they were. We had already been in Seattle and left and were back just for a while. And so we already knew what grunge was. We had already heard Alice in Chains, but we had not heard Nirvana yet. So cruising down State Street, all of a sudden K-Bear just like, this is a new song, another band out of Seattle called Nirvana. And the second we heard that, doom, 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 it was just like, whoa. And we just cranked up that stereo. We're cruising back and forth. Everybody playing Motley Crue, Metallica was like, what is that? And what, Rat's fifth or fourth album that totally sucked? That's what everybody was playing. Then here we come with Nirvana cruising down, because we already knew who some of these bands were. They weren't signed yet when Danny and I were up there. So that was just like a whole different era. And going up to Seattle that first time and experiencing grunge before it started playing on the radio and stuff, that was, I mean, I feel so privileged, because so many other groupies, yeah, they might have toured with bands and they were around with like great bands like Led Zeppelin and The Who, and everybody came out, but they didn't have like the kind of musical genre journey that Gen X had. I mean, in rock and roll alone, we had so many genres happening within such a small period of time. And when grunge hit, we all know it just took over. I mean, even Vogue magazine, all the runways with the big designer, everything was centered around grunge. So Danny and I, because our love for music, because we had met this other groupie, we took off up to Seattle, and we got to experience during the birth of grunge, like with the Gits, Mia Zapata, who we all know was a victim of the Green River Killer, and we saw Soundgarden and Mother Love Bone and Alice in Chains and everybody before they were even famous. So it's like my musical journey has been just incredibly insane because I've not only just heard these songs as they were coming out, but I was around when the bands were coming up, when everybody was clamoring to go to Seattle and to get all these bands signed. And, Mother Love Bone was the first to go and Sub Pop was just happening. And so by the time Nirvana came out and we were cruising down State Street blasting it and everybody's like, whoa, what's that? And then you start hearing, people try to change the radio station and stuff like that. It was just like, it hit us hard. We're like, whoa, this is really cool. This is something new that we haven't experienced before. And grunge came. And then, even with like Prince and the, experiencing hanging out with Ice-T and Digital Underground and Tupac and stuff, like, just, God, I can't even I started wanting to pinpoint all the songs that kind of made my musical journey what it is and kind of took me to where I am today. But it's just so hard because there was just so much amazing music during my formative years. And, I think that's the cool thing about music. It's a never-ending journey. There's always room for different types of sounds, different types of what kind of woohoo makes you sit back and go, well, wait a minute, what is this? In my early years, of course, it was younger, it was sexier, it was fun, it was crazy, it's wild. And then as you get older, your college age, it was more intelligent, but it was still rebellious and wild and sexy and kind of more family oriented, as far as the road goes. Then, rap was happening during that. We got to see different genres and different ways of people. And, then Nirvana comes and, grunge happens and it just sunk like the attitude. Everybody was in like the heroin chic depression and stuff like that. Even though most people who were in that little Vogue mind frame didn't do that stuff. So they just sort of jumped on the bandwagon. And, we even saw, like I said, the boy band era. Never really listened to the music, but I sure as hell had fun with them between the sheets a few times. So, to kind of describe, like I said, I really wanted to describe songs that took me to where I am, still with my love of music, still looking for new stuff, still, finding obscure music that really excites me, because it's so hard to even excite me with music anymore, especially these days, because everybody's sampling and kind of doing the same thing, following the flock, phoning in and not even being in the studio together anymore. Music sucks these days. And it's really hard to find really interesting stuff. So when I do, I get so excited, like Tired Pony, which is, kind of a super group with Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol and, REM, Peter Buck and stuff like that. So, and Robert Plant is always interesting me musically wise because he's kind of like on that never ending journey as well. He doesn't want to stay stagnant in one area or stuck with one band or anything like that. I love that about Robert Plant. I think, was he a great musician? He's a great singer. Did he have a incredible historic part in rock and roll history? Absolutely. But I think my favorite thing about him is the fact that he constantly goes in different directions. We don't know what he's going to do next. So I think and watching Robert Plant over the years has really kind of influenced me to broaden my horizons musically, because everybody's like, oh, the 80s, that's my favorite music. It was the best time of my life. I think every chapter we have to find the best parts of our lives, and music really does help us do that. So, like I say, for everybody who thinks the 80s groupies were just a bunch of starfuckers looking to, put a notch on the bedpost or be the notch on the bedpost and just kind of jump offs and stuff, no. We had the same love of the music. We had the same love of the family on the road, the same love of the adventure, the same love of the unknown. And I think that's really what music is. It's the unknown. We don't know what this album's going to sound like. We don't know what the next song coming out is. I mean, these days we have a lot more accessibility, but we don't know who's going to come up with what. Now it's things are kind of predictable. The music business kind of really rules it, as to where I came from a time when music really was ruled by the people who made it, you know? They weren't looking to satisfy the contracts or this and that or whatever, and bands, even though they fought, they still went into that studio together and made great music, and it's just not like that anymore. So still kind of on a musical journey, even though it doesn't excite me like it used to, because like I said, it's kind of the same old thing. It's kind of, these days, Motley Crue, let's face it, Vince Neil, whew, on that stage, good Lord, brother, retire. They could just go out on the road at 6 a.m. because Kingdom Heart. I mean, that was better than what Vince Neil does on stage these days. Because let's face it, we all love going to concerts to get in that feeling, to get in that live. And I don't think, people are communing and camaraderie is not happening at concerts like it used to. So music, honestly, I love it. It's always a part of my life. I will forever be a part of its history. It will always be something that means the world to me. But it just doesn't excite me like it used to, because there's just not a lot of good stuff coming out anymore. It's very rare. Greta Van Fleet was good when they first came out, but more in a novelty way of like, wow, those kids can wail. And they got all the groupies coming towards him and thinking him and that lead singer, her and the lead singer are soulmates. Ask his boyfriend about that, honey. Anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of my musical journey, and that's where I am now. And I think we all kind of had those first songs that we heard, like I did, like Rad and Sean Cassidy and Duran Duran and Depeche Mode. And, I saw the first video on MTV when it very first debuted, and Headbangers Ball when it came out. So I was really lucky to be in an era that really kind of opened up so many different genres to be accessible, and to be able to cross musical boundaries into different genres. So it kind of, after those formative years of hearing those first ones, hearing Kiss, hearing Meatloaf, hearing Rat That Day at the Pool, meeting David Lee Roth and hearing Van Halen. We used to go to my friend Melissa's house, and we would go to her brother Brian's room where he would have all the cool music too, So it was a really cool beginning to the journey and middle and everything else, but it's kind of slowed down now for me. Has it for you guys? I don't think people get the thrill out of music that we got back in the day, which explains why there's so many TikTok accounts of girls and guys and everybody talking about the 80s and pretending to be 80s groupies and stuff like that, because the 80s, 90s, I mean, Gen X, we had the best music of all kinds, no matter how you slice it. We got to see so many things born, and it's just not like that anymore. We don't have that newness. We don't have that creativity that's coming up with something new. But I'm holding out. I'm holding out hope that there's going to be some killer stuff. So you guys tell me down there, what was your songs that started your musical journey? What was your band? What do you want to see now? Tell me down in those comments, because I love our conversations, you guys. I suck at emails, I know, but I'm good at comments. So tell me down in the comments, you guys. And thank you to everybody who made this whole episode with me. You guys rock. I really appreciate it. I just can't even tell you how much it means to me for everybody just to sit around this whole time and listen to me and really engage in the conversation. So thank you guys so, so much. And as always, you guys who are just lurking around, hit that subscribe, hit the bells, become a mammal, a mammal. Become a member of the family here at Cocktails and Rocktails, because it's growing and it's an amazing family full of people. And ladies, you have a lot of questions for me. Like I said, go down in the comments and talk to the other groupies, start conversations, because we're here for you. We're here to talk to you about that. Talk to you about the music. Talk to you about the musicians we know. So don't be afraid. We're cool people. So, all right, everybody. Hope you liked today's episode. And thank you as always. We'll see you next time on Cocktails Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.